definitely, this is such a panorama of different characters, locations. I mean, you're exactly right about that, that it does give audience members these opportunities to kind of inject themselves into all these different situations and play out those scenarios. It's really fascinating as sort of a thought experiment for everybody watching, a morality thought experiment. So Ben, going back to that March 11th date, you wrapped filming. Does the pandemic, does the real time news impact the editing? I mean, how did it impact the way that you shaped the series going forward after that?
It really, I mean, well, how did it shape the editing? I mean, it meant that we had to do all of it remotely, so practically it completely changed. I've never set foot. I mean, I guess I was there when we rented the space, but I've never set foot inside our post-production office because by the time I got back to LA from Vancouver, we weren't we weren't allowed to go in. So, yeah, I mean, that's just changed the practicalities completely. In terms of the actual show, though, it really hasn't. I mean, there was a suggestion at one point early on about whether we were going to sort of acknowledge COVID in the show, and whether somebody was going to say, "Wow, this is even worse than COVID" or something. And I really resisted that, and I'm very glad I did because I that just would have felt really dishonest. I mean, the conceit of our show is that this is a world that gets hit instead of with COVID, it gets hit with Captain Trips, which no matter how bad the awfulness that we're all living through, it gets hit with something. The world of the show gets hit with something much worse that within the space of a few weeks wipes out 99 in the book. It's 99.4. In our story it's more like 99.99% of everyone. By the way, I think it's that in the book too, because we did the math about how many people would be left in Manhattan if 99.4% were wiped out, and it would have still been too full for us to have the beautiful sojourn that Jovan and Heather Graham have in an empty New York. So, but we really didn't. We look. We did a lot of research about how people might respond to a spreading pandemic in 2019, and I'm happy to say, or I don't know, or exhausted to say, or I don't know, horrified to say. I think we got a lot of it right. I mean, there were a couple scenes that we shot late on, like a couple pickups that were in some of the early episodes of sort of some big crowd scenes and people walking around as it was clear that the disease was spreading, but before people realized how serious it was. And I think in some of those scenes, we went out of our way to put like a sprinkling of people in masks because, we wanted it to be clear that they really in the span of a few weeks, this virus runs through everywhere. So we wanted to make it clear that they didn't really have time to adapt and figure out ways to protect themselves, but that people were kind of doing this catch as catch can. Some people wearing masks, some people trying to stay clear of other people, and frankly, that a lot of that felt true to the experience of living through it, where sort of in some fundamental ways everybody was on their own to kind of figure out, well, how are you going to do how are you going to do this, how are you going to respond, what are the little rituals that you're going to put in place in your day-to-day life to try to protect yourself.